Good morning. Today is Thursday, June 26th. I'm Corva Coleman from NPR News, and here are today's top stories. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the U.S. strike on Iranian nuclear facilities caused massive damage. NPR's Quill Lawrence reports he attacked the press for suggesting otherwise.
The Secretary of Defense repeatedly praised President Trump's leadership in deciding to attack Iran's nuclear sites last weekend. He attacked the press for reporting on leaked preliminary intelligence assessments that cast doubt on whether Iran's nuclear program has been destroyed. Hegseth cited other Trump administration sources, as well as the international community, to assert that the mission succeeded. He said he was not aware of any intelligence that Iran might have moved some of its stockpile of nuclear fuel. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, gave a lengthy presentation, including videos of the bombs, and describing the years of planning and hours of nonstop flight by U.S. servicemen and women. But he said a full assessment of the strike was still pending. Quill Lawrence, NPR News.
Amid the debate in the U.S. about the state of Iran's nuclear facilities, Israel's nuclear agency is adding its own assessment. Israel says it set Iran's nuclear program back. NPR's Daniel Estern reports from Tel Aviv.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office released an assessment on behalf of Israel's Atomic Energy Commission. It assesses that U.S. and Israeli strikes set back Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapons by many years. It also said the U.S. strike on Iran's most fortified nuclear enrichment site, Fordow, destroyed the site's critical infrastructure and rendered the enrichment facility inoperable. Israel's Atomic Energy Commission did not say how it knows that. President Trump suggested in remarks to reporters that Israel had agents at the Fordow facility. He said, quote, "They have guys that go in there after the hit, and they said it was total obliteration." Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
The Trump administration is suing all the federal judges in Maryland. The administration is citing a federal court order that blocks the immediate removal of detained migrants. NPR's Ryan Lucas reports.
The Trump administration filed the lawsuit against 15 federal judges in the District of Maryland. The administration is challenging a standing rule put in place by the district's chief judge that automatically blocks on a limited, temporary basis the government from deporting migrants in Maryland who file suit challenging their detention. The administration says the rule impedes the power of the White House to enforce immigration laws and is an unlawful attempt to restrain the executive branch. The unusual suit was filed in the court the administration is suing, so the Justice Department is requesting that the case be presided over by a federal judge from another district. The court in Maryland declined to comment. Ryan Lucas, NPR News, Washington.
The Vaccine Advisory Committee for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention will re-examine the number of vaccines that kids get. NPR's Ping Huang has more.
The CDC's influential Vaccine Advisory Committee met with all new members, and a new tone was immediately evident. Martin Kulldorff, a biostatistician and the chair of the group, says they're considering major changes to the vaccine schedule for kids.
The number of vaccines that our children and adolescents receive today exceed what children in most other developed nations receive.
The committee's recommendations are critical in guiding state and local vaccine policies, along with what insurers cover. Ping Huang, NPR News, Atlanta.
The migrant Kilmer Abrego Garcia will remain jailed in Nashville, Tennessee. A federal judge had ordered his release on bail. He's facing allegations of human smuggling. His lawyers are now arguing against prosecutors' demands that Abrego Garcia be deported again. Protesters gathered yesterday outside the courthouse in Nashville.
Free Kilmer! Free Kilmer! Free!
When his case began, Abrego Garcia had been wrongly deported to El Salvador earlier this year. He was quietly returned to the U.S., but jailed on the smuggling charges that he denies. His wife, Jennifer Vasquez-Sura, spoke yesterday.
This fight has been the hardest thing in my life.
Abrego Garcia will remain jailed for the present. Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani is poised to become the Democratic Party's nominee for mayor of New York City. NPR's Stephen Fowler has more on what that primary outcome may mean for the National Party.
At a time when the Democratic brand is facing deep unpopularity with voters, Mamdani's success is notable. Tom Jensen of Democratic-aligned firm Public Policy Polling said a big part of that came from increased turnout and support from voters under 45.
What we really just found the key was he was engaging young people in a level that's extremely unusual for something like a primary election for mayor.
After losing the White House, the Senate, and failing to retake the House, the Democrats are searching for good signs anywhere they can. Stephen Fowler, NPR News.
Today marks 10 years since the Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage across the U.S. with its Obergefell decision. NPR's Jason DeRose reports that support for same-sex marriage among people of faith has increased over time.
Pew Research finds support for same-sex marriage has jumped over the last decade from 46% to 58% among all religiously affiliated U.S. adults. But evangelical Christians remain strongly opposed. The Southern Baptist Convention recently passed a resolution calling for the overturning of Obergefell. The church's Brent Leatherwood says they're inspired by what happened with abortion rights.
As you saw with the overturn of Roe, that took 50 years. So we would have to be patient.
Even if Obergefell were overturned, the 2022 Respect for Marriage Act requires states with bans to recognize same-sex marriages performed elsewhere. Jason DeRose, NPR News.
In the Israeli-occupied West Bank, Palestinian officials say 3 Palestinians were killed by Israeli fire after Israeli settlers attacked a Palestinian village. Israel made arrests, as NPR's Daniel Estrin reports from Tel Aviv.
The Israeli army says dozens of Israelis set fire to property in the Palestinian village of Kafr Malik. The village council released this video. A car is engulfed in flames as a man tries to put out the blaze with a pot of water. The Israeli army says clashes then broke out, with Palestinians opening fire and hurling rocks, and soldiers shot at them, resulting in the killings. In a rare move, Israeli authorities said they arrested 5 Israelis at the scene. Another settler arson attack was documented near another West Bank village, Taibe. For years, the U.S. and European countries have accused Israel of tolerating settler violence against Palestinians. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
A loaded cargo ship that was on fire burning off the Pacific coast of Alaska sank on Monday. It had been burning for 3 weeks. The crew escaped safely, but the ship was carrying thousands of electric vehicles, and it had some 1,800 metric tons of fuel oil. Emergency responders say they've not yet seen evidence of pollution. Coast Guard officials say it is too early to tell if the EV's lithium batteries triggered the fire. You're listening to NPR News.